Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode and another insightful conversation. Today, we are going to be talking to a very powerful and intentionally impactful young lady who is not only shaping her life to live her purpose, but in that process, helping organizations live their purpose and create a lasting impact as well. As intriguing as that is, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. I am going to let Gia come on and talk to us about her and the impact she's creating, because you're going to realize how much more powerful it is when it comes from her. So Gia, welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Gia Rutkowski. I'm a 20-year-old public speaker. I'm a marketing consultant, and I also make content online. It's all about young people because I myself am a young person. I grew up with technology in my hand at all times, and that insinuates the implications. I've seen a lot of things happening with young people that not many people understand, whether it be signs of loneliness, signs of not really knowing what's going on, isolation, aimlessness. And I always found myself looking at technology as the reason for that. I mean, naturally, technology is going to be a part of our lives that we can't really escape from, that we need to use as a tool, but there is a way of doing it mindfully to escape the implications or to fix the implications or turn them into something very powerful and very useful. Every single thing I do focuses on Gen Z and Gen Alpha, whether it be me speaking to them directly through my content on the app or telling companies and acting as the face for them to almost reach them more mindfully and reach them in a way that can benefit both sides instead of just utilizing young generations to their advantage, which a lot of people are doing.
Thank you, Gia. So you and I work with Equipa Kids, and we are committed to that cause, and that's how I got to know you. But talk to us a little about your purpose in life and how you are taking your purpose and the impact you want to make, and then figuring out the organizations you want to partner so that the impact is cascaded throughout the various aspects of society and a co-created impact.
Yes, well, I mean, I'm starting my career as I started a few years ago. I started public speaking when I was 16, I want to say. I started in nursing homes, talking to older generations about how to connect with their grandchildren. I grew up in a multi-generational household. My grandmother is a Greek immigrant, and we always had a lapse of communication. Every single thing I do is with the intention of further connection amongst everyone. I find that young people specifically are losing touch with the tangible world around them with the replacement of the digital world, and thus everything I do is to connect them better. I'm starting off pretty early with my career, so I want to set the precedent of things being moral and making me feel not guilty. So with that said, every single company I choose to work with has what I deem to be a positive impact. Equipa Kids very much is positive. It's with the intention of helping kids connect further, empathize further, which we are losing, unfortunately, connect with others further, understand things further, comprehend them beyond their own lens and biases. And every other company I work for and act as the face of also does the same thing, whether it be activism, awareness, music and culture. Every single thing revolves around further connection and building community, external and secular, to the digital world.
Thank you for that. What drives you at this young age to be that present, that mindful, and that in tune with who you are? Because too many adults don't know who they are either. What allowed you to get this precise and focused at a young age?
Right. I think I was blessed with a very unconventional upbringing. And what I mean by that is I find that a lot of people believe that who they are is the result of the amount of time passed. So they are sculpted over a period of time, but I think that life is more defined in blocks or time periods. So when you look at most people my age, 20 years old, I took a gap year, so I'm a freshman in college now. Most people in my position would define themselves by their prior block of experience, which would be high school, right? And then 4 years from now, they would be defined by their past block of experience, college. And then as they go further into their career, their last block of experience, their intro into the industry, right? I traveled a lot when I was young, and I had a massive perspective from that. I've been to most continents, and I have been around the world and lived around the world. That offered me such a massive, massive perspective shift from those in my peers in my age range. And also, I started working really early. I was also raised in an unconventional household with a lot of generations in it, which also broadened my perspective. I was blessed with a very unconventional upbringing compared to the other peers of my age. And thus, I had more opportunities and almost the capacity extension to be able to have that self-reflection just because I was exposed to so much outside of the internet. So, I mean, with that said, I being around the world and being in the tangible world so much in ways that are exciting and new and novel made me appreciate it a lot and thus see the total contrast of the behavior when people spend a lot of time online. Because I fall into that too. And I see how it is too. And knowing that there is something different from that, just from my in-person experience, made me realize how detrimental it can be. But again, I was very blessed growing up, and I learned a lot of lessons from it. The thing is, you don't need my exact experience to learn what I have. You just need to know that it's a possibility.
Absolutely right. And the travel expands your learning and your exposure more than anything else. So I'm so glad to hear you say that, Gia. Now let's pivot to Equipa Kids. What is it about Equipa Kids attracts you to be engaged with it? And what do you love about partnering and being the voice and face of Equipa Kids?
Well, for context, I've worked with a lot of kids in the past. I used to do community service in preschools, and I did it in my Greek community. I did it outside of my Greek community. And to be very, very kind and very broad, the kids were very non-compliant and non-cooperative a lot of the time. Now, that is not their fault. They're kids. They are a reflection of the world around them at their rawest form. They have no refining. They have no way of doing that yet, right? They're 6. But that did tell me a lot about the world we were growing up in, especially in new generations. And I mean, I'm technically from a more new generation. I saw the total shifts in behavior, even amongst my peers. So knowing that it's getting even more radical with younger generations made me not worried, but a little curious. Um, I also tried communicating with them about it, and a lot of them didn't really know how to express their thoughts, express what was around them. And with that said, I mean, what are you to do without communication? How do you connect with someone without being able to connect and communicate with them? When I saw the mission of Equip Our Kids and about how it was there to foster empathy, to foster communication, to foster all of these skill sets that we need to be present together, I hopped on immediately. I mean, we are nothing without our skills of language. And if people have no way of connecting with each other through language, through mutual understanding, there's going to be a further division. And there's already a massive division amongst different generations. So I would love to be able to help catalyze a connection between older people and older generations like you who have incredible lessons with younger people who very much need to hear it. Because right now there is a disconnect.
Very much so. And not only the generational divide, children are growing up in households where communities are divided. So there are so many areas of bifurcation that what people are exposed to is so little. And in this age of technology, technology is rigged to truly feed you your own biases. So amplifying the confirmation bias and making every human believe that their bias is the overarching reality is exacerbating this divide. How do you see your role and Equip Our Kids bridging that and bringing perspective? Because without perspective taking, we cannot build human relationships.
100%. So what I think a lot of Equip Our Kids and the social emotional learning they promote does is it causes people to be more present and more connected with the world around them. And by that, I mean they're more able to communicate to the people around them. They are more able to see the world around them and understand how they reflect those biases, how they reflect what is around them better. Because the truth is, we are all victims of our environment. We are the amalgamation of everything we have known ever. So as long as you know how the real tangible world around you affects you and how it makes you feel, when you go online, because again, for younger generations, it is inevitable, and you do succumb to these echo chambers and these algorithms that sort you into like-minded people, you'll be able to think, oh, wow, this is different from the real world. Because I see what the biggest problem right now amongst young kids is that their screen time daily is upwards of 8 hours, right? So that's making up a large portion of their exposure. And whether we like it or not, we become the largest portion of our exposure. It's just how humans are. So if you are more connected and present in the real world around you, and then thus realize that the digital world is very different from said real world and maybe not the best, that's the first step. It's acknowledging it. It's thinking, hey, maybe everyone thinking just like me is not the best for me because that's not what I'm around with my family, with my friends, with my teachers. I think people should be viewing the echo chambers that the online world provides as something to be skeptical of instead of solace.
I like where you're taking this thought process and the way of addressing this reality that we're facing. Gia, what's coming up for me is the question of how can Equipa Kids continue to equip the future generations? And in the process, how do we raise children who are ready to come and impactfully transform the world we live in, meaning professionally, whether they become teachers, politicians, doctors, engineers, all the professional world is not prepared for what is coming at them either. And there is such a huge generational gap. Children no longer learn from a traditional school methodology because they're learning from the internet. The traditional education of the I thou relationship and memorization, and the teacher is the keeper of all the knowledge, those days are gone. The entire dynamic has shifted, and the generations that are setting up the institutions and running the institutions are completely not in touch with the generation that's coming up. And there's going to be a perfect tsunami here. How can you see this being bridged through organizations like Equipa Kids?
100%. Well, to address what you just said, yeah, that gap is already there. You're seeing so many older generations talking about younger generations, talking about their work ethic, talking about their communication, talking about their. And I mean, that is justified because there is a difference there. Not saying younger generations are bad and older generations are the best ever, but there is a lapse in understanding and there is something new and different forming. What organizations like Equip Our Kids do is they give our children and future and like earlier on incoming generations these skills to be able to talk about what they are doing and why they're doing it eloquently in a way where everyone can understand. Because the truth is, most young kids, whether it be the words they use or the way in which they speak, a lot of older people have a hard time understanding it through their lens. Equipa Kids offers kids more universal forms of communication, more self-evaluation skills to actually see why they do what they do. Because the truth is, people do what they do. They'll be able to say, oh, I'm doing this. This is how I feel. But they're not able to address why they do it. That's a skill set that takes a really long time to develop. So when organizations like Equip Our Kids start early on in schools, and God, sometimes even preschool, and tells kids, hey, everything you do happens for a reason. Sit down, listen to how you feel how you feel in your body. Now trace it back to maybe why you feel like that. That could change the world because a lot of people, a lot of this suffering stems from people just acting upon what they're doing in a very reactive manner. Now, humans are reactive creatures. That is what we have taught ourselves and what the social norm is, but we don't have to be.
Precisely. And fundamentally, as humans, we are feeling creatures. And when we get in touch with our own emotions and understand it, then we can channel what we do and how we are being a little more effectively, right? We are able to think and act, but fundamentally, we're feeling creatures. So I love how we do that at Equip Our Kids. And before we open this up to a live audience conversation, Gia, how can people get a hold of you and get a hold of Equip Our Kids?
Yes, 100%. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Gia Rutkowski, Giarutkowski. My email is also the same thing at gmail.com, giarutkowski@gmail.com. If you reach out to me about Equip Our Kids, I can also refer you to that. Equip Our Kids is just Equip Our Kids. You can Google it.org, and that has every single resource there is. But again, I'm pretty open to a lot of different things. The thing is, when it comes to behavior, which is my exact specialty, every single thing is connected. Humans are social creatures that have created a social world. So any question that has to do with behavior, with how you're feeling, with what you can do and move forward, it's going to connect to Equip Our Kids, or to what I do, or to what you do, Kaz, in some way or another. It's all interconnected, and thus it's pretty digestible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gia. Go ahead, Robin. I know you have a question.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting conversation. I'm interested in what are some of the major challenges that you've run into, either externally or internally, as far as getting into schools? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of programs, a lot of wonderful programs. And how are you able to get into schools? And what have been some of the challenges involving, getting the educators on board and getting the parents on board?
Okay, well, there are a few different things. First of all, there are a lot of biases against the idea of social emotional learning. There's been a lot of media put out in previous years about what its agenda could mean and what it could insinuate, and a lot of it is not necessarily true. So you'll see a lot of these schools that do have the funding to put these programs into their school just not really being on board because they believe it's something it's not. The truth is, Equip Our Kids, all it does, and social emotional learning as a whole, all it does is telling children to be present with how they feel instead of pushing it down like a lot of people do still promote. Understand where it comes from. Feelings are a symptom. They are not anything more than a symptom. Yes, you should feel them, but yes, they trace to something else underlying. So a lot of people are uncomfortable by the idea of what I would say is feeling your feelings, and a lot of people are used to pushing it down and suppressing it. So when you see a lot of educators and you see a lot of people who are in charge of kids, they are hesitant to allow those programs into their schools just because they personally have a bias against it. They personally believe it's foreign and unjust, and thus they don't allow it in. Aside from that, it is outreach. It is pretty difficult to almost reach out to schools that you are not around tangibly and physically, regionally, especially schools that need it the most. Schools that need social emotional learning and Equip Our Kids the most are underfunded schools in urban areas specifically, and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth either to take on these programs. A lot of their teachers are not paid enough to teach these programs, and a lot of them do try to do it out of the goodness of their heart, but it is hard to put in an actual curriculum for things like these. So what I would say above all else are the communities that need this stuff the most have a really hard time taking it on.
Yeah,
Thank you so
that makes
much,
sense. Yeah.
Gia. I love that question, Robin. And as the executive director and president of Equipa Kids, one of the things that we have consciously done in my role and my predecessor, the founder, is actually build SEL alliances. So Jay Levin, the gentleman who started this organization, kicked off the California Social Emotional Learning Alliance. And this alliance originally started in Chicago, and it's in all the states, right? And so there is definitely a collaborative partnership with the SEL Alliance, and we are the driver of the movement, and then the programs are delivered by the alliances and the partners of the alliances. And we have a speaker bureau and partners who go into the school system and deliver these programs too. So it's not something we do alone. It is something we collaborate and co-create. And we have a network that allows us and enables us to get into every state in the United States and reach the school districts through the local alliances, to give you a broader perspective.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Thank you, Robin. Mark, go ahead. I know as the founder and CEO of I Am for Kids, you are curious about Equipa Kids and have a question or two.
Well, yeah, I was impressed with just the sheer amount of resources that are available through there. And I know that we are talking about doing some things together. And I love that Gia, that you talked about how we react to things that happen. And one of the things that we teach, for example, is that you get to choose what that reaction is. Most of those things are just pattern responses, as press button, get reaction. And once you realize that you can physically change that, I'm sure you've experienced this. You've seen that you can literally see an immediate transformation in some of these kids. So tell me what it might be like. What is one of your favorite stories of whether it be with one kid, a classroom, whatever, some things that you've done?
Ooh, oh my goodness. Okay, well, this is a bit more of an intense example, but I did used to work a lot with kids on the spectrum and children on the spectrum, specifically reactive ones, right? And we implemented behavioral observation of them and also programs to help them with their different behavior. I had a few clients that they were wonderful. They were wonderful. And one of the biggest leaps forward, because there's always one way of telling when you know things are going to start being pushed forward incredibly. And it's when before, and I had one client specifically who did this really early on, and it was very validating actually. Right before they had a reaction, what we would always push for them to do and we would always promote for them to do is, okay, just stop. You can react accordingly, however feels right for you, as long as you just stop for a moment before. A lot of these clients would see that and they would utilize it to their advantage, right? They would stop and then they would lash out, right? They would stop and then they would yell. They would stop and they would continue what they were to do anyway. But that one pivotal moment where you see them stop and all of a sudden they just don't do anything. They don't even have to respond positively. They just don't do anything at all. They just stop. And then you see like their eyes glaze over, they're reflecting over to themselves. Like, oh, maybe I don't need to respond like that. That was a pivotal moment for a lot of our clients. And that's one thing that you always see working with kids, working with changing kids, that makes your heart swell.
Yeah. You can literally see it in their faces that
Yeah.
they get it.
Yeah. You see the frontal lobe develop a little bit.
That is such a beautiful question. And Gia, your answer is actually the answer for adults too, right? In my culture, we say before you respond, before you react, roll your tongue in your mouth 10 times and then say what you were going to say, right? So even for adults to stop and think and process what is it you're about to do is such a huge, huge, impactful moment. So I have absolutely loved spending this time with you, having this conversation. I have the honor and privilege of working with you side by side as part of Equipa Kids. As we bring this to a close, Gia, I am so grateful for your time, for your insights, and your passion. What closing thoughts do you have for children and parents, and maybe even teachers, of how we can build a better world where the generational divides and the gaps can be built better and we can truly live harmoniously?
100%. It starts internal, but then it very quickly becomes external. The thing is, all you really need to do as a starting point in the internal is realize that positive change needs to be made. And then from there, work on everything around you. Because one thing about humans is that we are a reflection of the physical and external world around us. The second you realize there needs to be positive change and you start refining the people around you, helping them, you start refining the environment around you, making it more accepting, more accommodating, you start to change further inside as well. And then as you sculpt the external world around you, whether it be correcting people in your life, saying, hey, maybe let's be kinder with that. Hey, maybe we should allow this person to do this. Hey, maybe just generally spreading kindness around you. Not only will you change positively yourself, but so will every single person around you as a result. I mean, we have a responsibility to make the world around us as kind and lovely and connective as possible, just because that affects all of us beyond just the internal. A lot of people do focus on a lot of internal work as a starting point, and that is completely valid, and you should be doing that. But it could also be the result of isolation being more prevalent and connection being a little more novel and a little more hard to find. So do realize that the external plays just as much of a role as the internal. And as you work on the external, you work on yourself and the people around you.
Thank you so much, Gia, for somebody who is just as young as you are, making such a huge impact. That was such a profound message, and appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And for our audience out there, you just heard Gia share her wisdom. Everybody's looking for kindness, everybody's looking for connection. And in a world where winning and being courageous is everything, just take a moment and think about the courage it takes to be kind. It takes far more courage to be kind than be cruel and go after what you want recklessly, not thinking about how it affects the rest of the world. Kindness and the connection is what's going to make your life richer, And at the end of the day, it's really going to be the source of your own happiness and your own peace. And technically, as you shape the rest of the world around you and you grow into who you were meant to be, truly the life you're sustaining is always going to be yours and that of your loved ones.